So what did you think? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
All right, that leads us over to the most important question that we ask on this show. Vince, where does Peggy Sue Got Married from 1986 rate on your Cageometer?
Oh, movie, I gotta give it a 4. Only because I feel like Nigel said, there's a message here, there's a theme here, but it's so muddled and just awful, and some bad acting, some bad writing, and some bad decision making by Coppola to go in and re-edit the end and just muddy things even more.
It might have been a worse ending.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we'll never know. I don't feel like there was any real character development. Peggy's story going back and forth, like, does she love him? Does she not love him? I don't really feel like they did a good job at actually fulfilling that progression of she hates him to now she's in love with him again, and like really having him redeem himself in her mind. Her character development is god awful. Like we talked about, most of the time she's the villain, or she comes off as the villain. She's not a very likable character. So no point in this film was I ever rooting for her. So I feel like there were a lot of issues with this film that made it less enjoyable for me personally. So I'll give it a 4 out of 10. As far as Nick's performance goes, I'll give him a 5. It wasn't great, but oddly, it was probably the most entertaining part of the film for me. I think Nigel said, I didn't think I would enjoy the voice, but it grew on me, and it was the least problematic part of the film for me. I felt like I was focused on all the other issues that I was having with the film versus his performance. I think he could have been way crazier. I was actually expecting him to be a lot more nutty, and he wasn't. So that kind of saved him. So for me, it was kind of like a middle of the road performance where I'm not great, not awful. So 4 for the film, 5 for Mr. Cage.
Yeah, he sort of is the straight man in some of the parts.
Yeah, some parts he is, which is really weird. Really weird.
Weird for talking like Pokey from fucking Gumby the whole time. All right, Nigel, where does Peggy Sue Got Married rate on your Cageometer?
Yeah, this one's hard because it's, I don't know. I still don't really know how I feel about it. Like, I don't like it. I don't think it's awful. I don't think it's good. I think I have to go with a 4 as well, just because I don't think it quite hits that bar of like 5 being like midpoint of like, yeah, there was a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff. I think it's more bad. It's just, it's so confusing how we're supposed to feel about this movie and what we're supposed to take away from it. And we've already said it, but it's like, what's the, it feels like there should have been a version where she goes through a more clear-cut character development and understanding, and we understand along with her that maybe she's the problem in all of this, and that has a self-realization. And I don't know. It's hard. This is really hard to articulate. I don't really know why. Mm-hmm. It's just because the movie's so ambiguous and weird with its messaging. Mm-hmm. Like I said, there was that one scene when she tells Richard that she doesn't want to get married, period. That felt like, okay, that's the character arc. That's what she's decided. She doesn't, I mean, that's what, or maybe that's what she was going for at the start. This is a terrible review. I don't know. I just feel like this movie has me confused.
It's modeled like the movie.
Yeah. Like, it's just like, okay, you kind of get with it. We all get that idea. If you could go back in time to high school, what would you do differently? And, you know, especially if you're not happy with how your life turned out, what would you, wouldn't we all like that chance? And she gets it, but then the movie just sort of like she fucks around and like, has flings with people and talks to a guy who becomes rich about getting inventions and doing stuff. And like, it doesn't really land. Like, it's not comedic. It's not as funny as it thinks it needs to be. It's not as dramatic as it feels like it is. I don't know. I just kept feeling like this guy did The Godfather and he did Apocalypse Now, and he's doing this movie, about a girl who goes back to her teenage years, and this is the best we got. It's just, yeah. And there was like I didn't feel like there was any chemistry between Nick Cage and Kathleen Turner. I do think his voice was detractive to it. Like, it's like, what does she see in him? He's such a weirdo. He's such a goofball. Why is she with him in the first place? And she's supposed to not be. She's supposed to be trying to drive him away. And then she gets back with him again. But again, it's like at the end, but it's like, why? Is it because what she sees in him? Or is it just because she wants her kids back? You know? I don't know. The movie doesn't really tell us all that well. And yeah. So this is a movie I'd never heard of before we started doing the show. After watching it, I'm like, okay, I kind of get why it's not one of those ones where everybody's like, this is a must watch for Nick Cage fans.
This is another one like Moonstruck where I knew women who really liked this movie, but not a lot of men who really liked it. And maybe it lands different from women, and maybe that's where we're not really the target audience.
Yeah, but I feel like that could have worked better if she had this moment of self-actualization that paid off or paid through. It was like she has this moment and then goes back on it, and we end up in the same place, except maybe a little bit better because she gets back with her estranged husband. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it.
Mediocre.
Yeah. On the side of a little bad. As far as Cage performance, I think I'll do a 5 as well. Kind of the same reasons like it's that Vince talked about. Like the voice I thought was really going to screw the part over and ruin the movie, and I don't think it did. It did kind of at first, but you get used to it, and you kind of got the sense of why he was doing it. He was just trying to play up this guy being an awkward dweeb and stuff, but it ends up elevating the movie a bit because it adds some kind of memorability to it. You know, otherwise it would just be like, if that had just been Dennis Quaid just being a random guy, the movie would just be like, okay, you'd have nothing to remember coming off of it.
Yeah, this would have just been a really boring movie if Cage hadn't made those decisions.
Yeah,
would have been even more awful.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I said, I didn't really get any chemistry between the two of them. I didn't really get it toward the end or at the conclusion of it. It just kind of felt like they were both like they didn't really like each other, which kind of was true based on what we know now of the behind the scenes. Like, yeah, he was pissing her off, and she didn't really want to. She didn't know why he was doing the voice, and had to just put up with it and do her the best she could with her scenes while he's acting opposite of that. So, yeah, early on in his career, sort of trying to do his own thing, trying to make his way, maybe not bend to the wishes of his uncle, who's sort of this mammoth filmmaker. I guess he can respect him a bit for that, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best performance out of him. Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of a downer. But
I thought I was being harsh, but I actually gave the movie a 5, and it. Kind of the same thing where it's just like right in the middle, like mediocre. I did enjoy it at parts. I feel like when I did the breakdown, rewatching it, sometimes I end up enjoying the movies more when I do that. And I think it was more because I just looked forward to Cage being goofy and doing his shtick. I think there's a message that is muddled, like you said, that we can identify with, but we're confused through the whole thing of like, okay, like, I would go back and I would change some stuff, sure, but my life turned out the way it did because of the decisions that I made back then, and ultimately that was probably the best course of my life going that it could have. But at the same time, it's like even at the end, she's like kind of going back and forth, like you said in that moment with Richard, where she's just kind of like, well, Peggy Sue got married, and that's that, and that's what fucked everything over. So I'm not doing that, but I really miss my kids. I'm like, well, those two things go together. That's maybe you don't want to be with Charlie anymore. Maybe that's the whole idea. But
she's not like in her future life. She's not with him anymore. So it's like.
Yeah.
Maybe the movie could have had her accept that she doesn't need to be with Charlie anymore because they're not supposed to be a thing. Yes, they made kids and their kids are great and they love their kids, but it's okay to have your own life now and not be living in the past and dwelling on your past mistakes. That's a more fulfilling ending, I think, to a movie than the sort of happy ending we got. And the confusing thing is sorry, I'm stomping on your review, but now that I'm thinking about it, I forgot what I wanted to say. Francis Ford Coppola wanted to add more tears to the ending of the movie, but the movie ends on kind of a happier note, so I don't really understand what he was going for.
It's supposed to be like a
by trying to add
tear.
I guess you could have emotional tears or whatever. But still,
she forgave him even though he was a piece of shit and did horrible things.
Right, because he was sad that she'd almost died or something.
I mean, like, you get the sense at the reunion that he's very upset that he's not with her anymore.
Yeah.
But
I think that's why he went to the reunion. I think that was supposed to be the intention behind his character showing up to the reunion, to tell her, hey, I'm no longer with Janet and I want to try to make this work. And he thought that they'd be able to recapture that magic by being at
in the place where their magic happened in the first place.
I think that's how it was supposed to play out. But like I said, going through the first act, that first act is so like the opening of the first act is so jumbled and so rushed and so weird that you don't have. I mean, they're cramming in so much shit so they can get to her being back in the 60s that you don't really understand what the fuck these characters. You get like surface level character motives.
Yeah,
and 10 seconds with him before she goes into fucking cardiac arrest.
Just maybe that's how they should have ended it. She just died.
I personally think it would have been a more enjoyable story if she had died. If she had been able to relive her life, realizing that she was always going to find her way back to him, and now she has to live with that regret for eternity.
Jesus, I was thinking more like she could have come to grips with her life and make peace with the choices that got her to where it's. And then she died. That would be a fulfilling one. Go hang out with her grandparents or whatever.
Her life was better than she thought it was.
Maybe that was the original ending, and he wanted to reshoot it to be like, okay, maybe,
Nigel's version is better. She accepts that her life always led to her children, and her children were the bright spot in the darkness that was her marriage. And now she can make peace with that and go be with her grandparents in heaven or whatever reality she has.
I do get the sense that she had a lot of good times with Charlie. It's just, they were, that's what reality is. That's what adult life is. And, when you're a kid, you think everything's going to work out just perfectly. And she probably thought of her childhood, years as like this perfect time where she had the whole world in front of her. And then she made these decisions that ended up causing her to get pregnant at 18 or whatever. And then everything went off the rails, and if she could redo it, she'd do everything different. But everything she has is a direct result of those decisions and the happenstance that happened to her at that time. I don't know. I feel like it's all over the place. It's muddled. Like that's
it.
The
It comes
problem
back
with
to
the
that.
movie.
You don't know. How are we supposed to feel about it? We don't know.
Yeah.
The movie could have made it clearer. There
The movie could have definitely made it clearer.
He goes back and muddles it even more by reshooting that ending.
Yes. Yeah, and I wonder if he reshot anything else, if it was just the ending and that was it.
Yeah, I do too. Like I said, I wonder if he went and reshot that scene with her and Benny out in the field on the soundstage with the worst
maybe
ever. Because it just everything else was shot so well and on location.
I mean, that would kind of track because they have the Starry Night conversation and then the dedication in it. So if you filmed both of those scenes to sort of bookend it into that storyline.
And that
maybe at one point
so
he did expect it to like be a reality, like, and things were different in this. I don't know.
Back to the Future style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or they're like, shit, we can't do that. Back to the Future already did it.
Yeah. Like, hey, that movie was good. Shit. We need to do something different.
Be good, and let's make this more confusing for our audience.
All right. As far as Cage, I gave him a 5 as well. I don't know, man. I waffle on it because I really enjoyed it, but maybe it's just because I really enjoyed Nick Cage doing goofy shit. So it's hard to evaluate it from a non-Cage fan perspective. But it did, like, that's the most enjoyable part of the whole movie is Nick Cage doing weird shit and talking about his hwang and all that kind of shit. Like, it's just so weird, and that's the only funny part of the show. Like, I don't feel like anything that Kathleen Turner did was all that funny, or any of the stuff around her character in general. Mm-mm. She was more the grounding force, and then he was just this wacky side character who made the movie actually have some humor.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say that you guys haven't said about it. It's just kind of like a middle of the road performance. I don't know if it adds or subtracts in the grand scheme of the story that they were trying to tell that they didn't really tell very well. But like I said, I have a hard time because it really was my favorite part of the movie. So,
yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that's the review.
Yeah, so that happened.
It's the best you can say about the movie.
Yeah, some things happened or didn't.
Hey.
You decide.
You decide.
I think you can also just imagine McKay from Adaptation, the scriptwriter guy, whatever, just like railing against, like, you can't just make it all a dream. Like, that's scriptwriting 101. You don't tell a story that doesn't actually happen.
Yeah.
You know?
For Nolan,
definitely did not wow them in the end, like McKay said.
Yeah.
Or McKee.
Yeah. I mean, not to say we can write scripts, but if she'd actually died at the end and the whole thing was her coming to terms with her life, then that could have worked. It could have been it doesn't actually happen, but it did happen in the sense that it's her reliving her life and understanding her life choices, how they got her where it needed to be, and then she can move on.
Yeah, and appreciating them at that point. Like, okay, I do appreciate that life that I have, and having a little bit of regret of not appreciating the moment, but she makes peace with it, and then she's able to move on.
Wish I had appreciated my husband more before he went off and cheated with a bimbo.
Yeah.
Though it would have been great if instead of seeing her parents in that moment, we just flashed to like the garbled TV noise that was in dark. Then it just ended with a grave. Peggy Sue.
Should make that edit.
With a sick, edit together. Riff.
For 5 minutes straight.